This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com, and I'm about to do my Good Friday edition of my weekly review of the points I find interesting in Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter. There's lots of other news in there that I don't say that I'm just not that interested in. And I would like to thank everyone, by the way, for giving us another successful month here on the Hannibal TV. Over 3 million views last month again. And I really appreciate all the fan support. We are also doing streams and videos at facebook.com/the Hannibal TV. So make sure you subscribe on there if you haven't already, because a lot of our videos actually get more views on Facebook. And our live streams are ad-free on Facebook as well. So let me get into the news. WWE released its annual proxy statement regarding how much the main executives earned last year. Vince McMahon earned $5,051,547, as well as another $13.8 million in stock dividends, which is a lot of money. President and Chief Revenue Officer Nick Khan earned $5,706,871, and that's another large amount of money. Paul Levesque, who is the Executive Vice President of Global Talent Strategy and Development, also known as Triple H, of course, earned a total of $2,841,544, $730,000 in salary, $583,523 in stock awards, $511,000 in bonuses. Chief Brand Officer Stephanie McMahon earned $2,592,205. Apparently the highest paid executive, which of course Vince McMahon earned more in stock options, but CFO Frank Riddick made $6,636,557, and he also, well, I guess this was because he had a signing bonus of $5 million. So a $5 million signing bonus, I guess this guy must be pretty good, because that's a huge signing bonus. Shane McMahon received $1,313,823 in his contract as a performer. The only match he had last year was against Braun Strowman. So that would have been his pay, regarding his pay for that match, as well as merch and other royalties. So Shane McMahon, for his limited work that he's doing in WWE, is still making a lot of money. Young Rock this past week teased The Rock versus Roman Reigns. I actually did see this clip. It's been going around Twitter, which I am at DEVONHANNIBAL on Twitter, by the way. But yeah, they are teasing that Roman Reigns is going to face The Rock at next year's WrestleMania in LA. And they had a thing where Roman Reigns was a kid trying to wrestle The Rock, who was a young adult by this point, on the Young Rock TV show. And the older Rock said, we're going to have to save this match for WrestleMania. So that was the big tease. Alexa Bliss and Ryan Cabrera, who I guess his big hit was On the Way Down back about 20 years ago, had a big feature by People magazine. And there was a lot of celebrities at the wedding, including Freddie Prinze Jr., Sarah Michelle Gellar, Seth Green, and Ashley Simpson, as well as a lot of wrestlers. Natalya is going to be working on NXT and SmackDown. Of course, I did train with her at the Dungeon, and she wrestled in Stampede with me. So really good person. She's one of the good people at wrestling, I would say. Now, Triple H did say last week that the minimum main roster pay is $250,000 American. That does not include royalties and other ways that they can make money. But you always hear WWE wrestlers complaining and wanting out of their contracts and so forth. The first house shows since WrestleMania are not going to be until April 16th and 17th. So you'd have to think most of the main roster are only wrestling about once a week on weeks that there's no house shows, because most of them don't appear on Raw and SmackDown unless, of course, there's a pay-per-view. But to work once a week, get promoted into a worldwide star, play fight for a living, become famous, travel the world, they don't have all that much to complain about. It's not like the indies where you have to get your own medical attention if you get hurt, or drive for hours to make $20. So I really don't have much sympathy when you look at, like, there wasn't even house shows in the weeks after WrestleMania. And my guess would be because the house show business, as Jimmy Yang actually said on this channel in an interview with John Paz recently, he was a WWE producer, and he was bringing up that the house show business for WWE was not profitable. Apparently, all the WWE talent got a memo that Vince McMahon does not want anybody using their real names anymore, or names they've used on the indie scene. Of course, this would not apply to people like Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar, Ronda Rousey, or probably Gable Stevenson, the Olympic gold medalist / two-time NCAA champion that appeared at WrestleMania. But for the newer people and the people without pull. So there you go. Apparently, their picture came out of Steve Austin, Seth Rollins, and Becky Lynch taking a photo together where they were holding up something that said their first night of WrestleMania had 65,715 fans, which was more than the second night, which had 65,653 fans. And Dave Meltzer brings up that this is interesting because that was the real attendance numbers that were released by Wrestling Tickets, because WWE had actually put out numbers saying the first night had 78,453 and the second night had 77,899. So not only are they breaking kayfabe, which I guess kayfabe just doesn't matter anymore. We're in a different era. So even though Austin's a face and Rollins is a heel, I don't know what Becky Lynch is, but they're all together. That wasn't the big deal. The big deal was that they were holding up numbers that were over 10,000 under the claim numbers by WWE each night. Summerslam is going to be at Nissan Stadium in Nashville, July the 30th. It has a 64,000 person capacity. It'd be interesting to see if they try and bring Austin back again for SummerSlam, since he was so well received at WrestleMania, because they need people that could actually fill these stadiums. Apparently, and I already covered this in my news yesterday, there was a photo from the Corey Graves Carmella wedding where Jon Moxley was in basically his street clothes, and people were like ripping on him that he wasn't better dressed for this wedding. And I guess Renee Paquette or Renee Young, whatever you want to call her, came out saying his flight was delayed. And by the time he got to the wedding, it was already starting, so he just wore those clothes. And to me, if you're flying from Boston to go to this wedding, wherever it was, to support these people, it shouldn't matter what you're wearing. And most weddings don't last that long, especially in the wrestling business. So really, it's just like a party. So who cares what he wears? And in looking at that picture, which I wonder if I still have it on here. Yes, I do. I still assert that Jon Moxley looks the best dressed of anyone in this picture. I'm not hating. As I said earlier, I like Natty, but none of these dresses that the women are wearing are anything spectacular. And Baron Corbin, I have nothing against him, but I'm not a fan of pink. His pink shirt, and even TJ in the back there has a pink shirt. So I personally give Jon Moxley the thumbs up for his outfit. Apparently, Simone Johnson, Dwayne Johnson's daughter, has just underwent her third knee surgery. She, of course, has been training with NXT. WWE is doing its biggest UK event in 30 years on September the 3rd in Cardiff, Wales, the same day Great North Wrestling is running in Petawawa, Ontario, by the way. So the rumors that you're going to see the Blood Hunter at this UK show, no, he's going to be at Great North Wrestling in Petawawa, Ontario. But anyways, Meltzer's bringing up that this will be the biggest event since Wembley Stadium at SummerSlam at 92, 30 years ago. However, this building only holds 69,000, whereas Wembley Stadium holds almost 80,000. So they won't beat the Wembley Stadium record, which Meltzer says had legitimately 79,127 fans at the show. And I remember back then it was pretty much an instant sellout. I still remember SummerSlam 92 vividly. Again, I talked about this before. My parents would never let me order the pay-per-view, so I would listen to them on the distorted screen. And I remember listening to that one in my basement as it was happening. I even remember being a kid playing with my friends in the backyard before I went in and listened to it that night. And then, of course, I remember watching it on VHS later, but it was a pay-per-view that really stood out to me, which Ric Flair didn't have a match on that pay-per-view for some weird reason, but he did appear on it, which I always found strange. Apparently, for the next pay-per-view, WrestleMania Backlash in Providence, Rhode Island, where I've actually been before to cover the Providence, Rhode Island Comic-Con a few years ago. And I've been in this arena because that's where the Comic-Con was. They have sold 6,920 tickets out of 8,700 tickets. Someone was asking me about Terry Funk yesterday. Apparently, Mick Foley met him while doing his comedy show recently, went to visit him at his retirement facility. He's 77 now and using a walker to get around. So it's great that he's still mobile and not in a wheelchair with all he's put his body through at 77 years old. AEW Dynamite had 3,700 paid this week from New Orleans and drew a 0.37 rating. Rampage did a 0.25 rating. Raw had 8,300 paid from Detroit with a 0.53 rating. SmackDown from Milwaukee, or Milwaukee as they say on Wayne's World, did a 0.6 rating, 6,900 paid with 8,115 in the building. NXT did a 0.12 rating. The UFC 273 pre-show did a 0.28 rating. Young Rock did a 0.41 rating. So Young Rock is getting decent ratings. Beat both of AEW's rating as well as UFC and NXT's ratings. Fozzy, Chris Jericho's band, received a gold record for their song Judas. And as I reported on my second channel, which you could subscribe to at the Hannibal TV second channel, and also on our The Hannibal TV Facebook page, I did a custom video for that last week that Jericho had Abdullah the Butcher on his podcast recently, where Abdullah claimed he only had a second grade education, among other lies, when in reality, Abdullah the Butcher is on the record saying he was kicked out of school at the age of 16. So apparently he failed the second grade enough times that he was still in the second grade at 16 years old, where he's on the record saying he was kicked out at 16. He also claimed that he never received any notifications about the lawsuits that he lost against me, which he actually came to Ottawa at one point related to one of those. In legal situations, you actually have to be served by a process server. So it's official, and the people know they're being served. He actually testified in relating to the American court case that he lost in Fulton County, Georgia. And his wife is quite well off. Well, he does own a house. He owned other properties, which he sold and gifted once he lost those cases. But his wife is actually quite well off, and he is entitled to half of his wife's assets if he actually gets a divorce, which his wife wants, according to what I've been told by my legal representatives, because he's lived with another woman for like 10 years. But yeah, so he did, last I checked, had nearly $5,000 in a GoFundMe after appearing on this Chris Jericho podcast, saying he needed it for an appeal. Well, the last court case he lost against me was in 2016. It's now 2022. And he already appealed that case in 2016 and lost again. So I don't know what appeal he's trying to claim he needs money for. They also had some idiot on that show claiming that you can't catch Hep C by sharing razor blades, which of course is one of the main ways of catching it, as it puts one person's blood directly into another person's bloodstream. But anyways, I was disappointed that Jericho would have a goofball like that on there, basically telling lies to try and get people to donate money to him. Apparently, the guy that attacked Samoa Joe at the end of Dynamite after Joe won the Ring of Honor television title was a 7'2" guy named Satnam Singh. He's 26 years old, and they want to use him as like a big India star because I guess AEW has TV in India now, and they want to give him a big push. Meltzer brings up, similar to the push they gave Jinder Mahal. Unfortunately for Jinder, who used to be one of my best friends when I lived in Calgary, but we haven't talked for years. Actually, before his first WWE run, his last independent match was for Great North Wrestling. But the problem with Jinder Mahal is they had Triple H beat him in India, which to me doesn't make any sense at all. So, yeah, apparently Tony Khan said he's gone on the record already saying he regrets the way that he booked this Indian guy's debut. So, I don't know. I saw it. He is tall. He is huge. Pat Buck, who quit the WWE as a producer after WrestleMania, has started as a producer with AEW. Apparently, Braun Strowman never got an offer from AEW, according to Dave Meltzer, because he publicly said on Twitter that Tony Khan wouldn't let AEW wrestlers appear for his independent promotion. And Meltzer brings up that when the pandemic happened last year when Braun was still making millions with WWE. He made fun of independent wrestlers who had no income and had to ask for GoFundMes. Of course, Strowman was signed right to a WWE development deal, so he never had to be on the independents. Until now, but he's been making millions in WWE for years, so I haven't heard of him getting booked on too many independent shows because he was asking for something like 25,000 American on top of travel, which I don't know. You'd have to draw such a huge crowd to make your money back on Braun Strowman. I couldn't see how many independent shows could afford him because yes, he wants 25 American plus flight and hotel. Then you still have to rent the building, book the rest of the card, possibly rent the ring, hire a DJ, hire lighting. I mean, you'd probably need to have a gate of like 40 or 50,000 on an independent show to come close to making your money back with Braun Strowman. And that's not saying anything against him. Other than The Undertaker could probably draw a $25,000 gate or a $50,000 gate on the indies, but there's not many that could. And if he's a multimillionaire, I don't blame him for asking $25,000 for an appearance because I don't even really want to wrestle that much myself. And I'm not a multimillionaire, so I could understand if you're a multimillionaire that you would need like very good incentive to come back and wrestle on the indies. Apparently, Shinjiro Otani, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, of Pro Wrestling 01, got paralyzed after taking a German suplex into the turnbuckle on April 10th in a match at Sumo Hall. Very sorry to hear about that. New Japan Strong, April 10th in Hollywood, California. Had approximately 375 fans, according to Dave Meltzer. Apparently, the MLW shows WrestleMania weekend had about 700 fans, according to Meltzer. And he brings up the only the only events that cracked over 1,000 were the 3 WWE shows that weekend, the Ring of Honor show, and a show with El Hijo del Santo that was like a Mexican lucha show. And Meltzer brings up that WWE actually did 5 shows in the market that weekend, if you want to include the NXT, the 2 WrestleManias, the Raw and SmackDown. So that's a lot. And I know that the World Class Pro Wrestling and Booker T were also going to put on shows that weekend, but they canceled due to low ticket sales. So it wasn't a good weekend for secondary wrestling events with 5 WWE shows, whereas in the past, the secondary shows did better. So that's basically the news. I'll get into some of your questions. I'll remind you again to follow us on Facebook at the Hannibal TV. Appreciate it. Pulsar Lights is 2 users. No idea what you're talking about. Vince's plans for the XFL. Vince does not own the XFL anymore. The Rock and his ex-wife bought it. Sunny is not locked up. She is, even though she is believed to have killed the man in an accident, they're waiting to find out what the blood test results of what substances she may or may not have been on. I understand her license was suspended, so she shouldn't have been driving. But she's free right now. Someone says it's a lot of money that those WWE executives are making and the wrestlers. Yeah, I mean, you put your body on the line, but it's a fun job. You put your body on the line bouncing, and you can make $100 a night. I've been bouncing at places where I've had to get in sometimes 6 or 7 physical altercations a night, and I've made less than $100. So I don't feel bad for wrestling, which is fun. You actually get a high from the crowd. The politics suck, and the injuries over time suck. And when you do get injuries, sucks. But in WWE, they'll hook you up with the best doctors if you get injured. But by the way, I was reconsidering starting back bouncing last weekend, but my ex-wife and my parents convinced me not to. And so I'm sorry for the bar that I said I was going to go back to work at. I know that they were mad at me, but the last thing I need is to get injured in a bar altercation when I got a movie coming up, Blood Hunter, Thirst and Rage, which is already on IMDb. So yeah, I actually started a week ago focusing more on my health. A week ago, 6 days ago. And I'm just going to focus on that movie, not let anything distract me. Don, the Will Smith slap was real, apparently. I'm going to say that because he's been banned by the Academy for 10 years. But there's a terrible war going on in the Ukraine right now with people getting killed every day by Russia, I guess, invasion of Ukraine or whatever you want to call it. I've been slapped literally hundreds of times in my life. No one was injured in that. They both apologize. I mean, there's way more serious stuff in this world to worry about than that. And I've even heard Will Smith is going to like rehab for slapping the guy. I mean, that was the only thing that was talked about from the Oscars. So was it really that bad in the end if it got people talking about the Oscars? I couldn't tell you who won anything. I guess Will Smith won something because I know he gave an acceptance speech after. So good for you, Will Smith and Chris Rock, for getting all the heat from the Oscars. I don't even know the Judas song, I'm sorry to say, but I really don't know. Pulsar Lights, no, Chris Jericho did not knock out Goldberg backstage. From what I understand, like there was an altercation between Jericho and Goldberg backstage in WCW where Goldberg ended up getting in some type of submission hold by Jericho, but it was broken up. And from what I understand from people that were there, it was like, like Jericho knew it was going to get broken up, but Jericho did get the better of Goldberg. But yeah, I don't think he knocked Goldberg out. Matt, I'm not going to reveal anything about the Blood Hunter movie other than we want it to actually be a series, and it's actually more of a pilot for a series than a movie. But we're calling it a movie in case it doesn't get picked up as a series and it only ends up being one episode. But honestly, even if it doesn't get picked up and if it does well online, we might continue doing the episodes. It will also be in some theaters, I'm sure, but it's mostly going to be a streamed movie, and I am really excited about it, but I'm not going to reveal. The only thing I have revealed about it is for the people that think it's like a biography of Devin Nicholson. No, it's a fictional story, and the Blood Hunter wrestling character in the movie is not Devin Nicholson. It's a fictional character, and there's lots of subplots to it. And yes, while the Blood Hunter is a wrestler and a horror character in the movie, I wouldn't call it a wrestling movie. It's a vampire movie, and there's like so many subplots to it that, well, you could identify it as a wrestling movie in some ways because I'm a wrestler and I will be playing the Blood Hunter in it. It's about, other than the Blood Hunter being a wrestler, and there may be some wrestling stuff in it, there's just so much more to the movie, and I'm excited about it. I should interview the Briscoes. None of the Ring of Honor interviews from the older Ring of Honor guys have done well on the even the AEW interviews. John Paz just did one with FTR that I posted on here. And I mean, they're supposed to be this huge tag team. And I'm not saying I have never even seen them wrestle. I'm not saying anything bad about them, but that interview doesn't even have 1,000 views, which I'm shocked by because you always hear so much about FTR online. But I can post some Dutch Mantel stuff and it'll easily go over 1,000. So I think the fans of this channel are more the old school fans. One of the reasons why I'm collaborating with guys like John Paz and other people, such as the guy from Pound and the Meat podcast lately, is to try and get other fans to follow us and make more variety of content. Bill Tyrus used to be my roommate. Where he wrestles now, I have no idea. Big guy. Sonny apparently crashed into a car, I don't know, and I believe the end of March, and a 75-year-old man passed away due to that crash. Sadly, I mean, that hasn't been proven in court, but yes, that has happened. I don't know where you've been, Barlight Broker, the past week or so, but yeah. Hello to Balls Deep. Someone says the wrestler that paralyzed the guy is getting harassed on social media, even though it wasn't his fault. Well, you'd have to assume that a move like getting German into the turnbuckles to break kayfabe, since it doesn't matter anymore. Everybody knows wrestling's entertainment. A regular German suplex would be something that you would call in the ring normally, but something more dangerous, such as being German suplex into the turnbuckles, that would be an idea that would usually be discussed by the wrestlers beforehand because it's more dangerous. You wouldn't just take a guy and German suplex him into the turnbuckle without him agreeing to it first in 99.9% of the cases, unless a match turns into a shoot in the ring. Because that's way more dangerous than a normal German. So that would have been a high spot that they would have talked to before. Jason says wrestlers need a union. A union wouldn't work in wrestling. A union would never work in wrestling because in acting, there's probably hundreds of thousands of jobs out there in North America alone. In WWE, how many jobs are there? 100? How many wrestlers are there? 100? Including development, maybe 150. If they're unionized, they're locked into that even longer. And it's already a very political business. There's a lot of great wrestlers out there that will never be in WWE due to political reasons and other reasons. And if there's a union, those guys are going to be in those jobs forever. It's very hard to get fired from a union job. You need a lot of turnover. Like a wrestler that's boring, for instance, would be kept on if there was a union. Now, I'm not saying Wildcat Chris Harris was boring, but that Braden Braden Walker. Does anyone remember that? He was undefeated. He had 3 or 4 matches in WWE, and then they released him because that character wasn't getting over. If there was a union, I mean, you guys would have been stuck with that character and someone else wouldn't have had the chance to take that spot. So it just doesn't work because there's no wrestling jobs out there. And on the independent scenes, most independent promoters are not making hardly any money. A lot of independent companies go out of business. Remember, what was it? There was one in Texas a couple of years ago, Wrestle Circus. that was doing so well it didn't last hardly at all, long at all, because like it's just impossible. It's almost impossible to make money on the independent wrestling scene. Promoters have to be doing it for fun because they just have a lot of money and are passionate about it, or they sell a lot of DVDs and merch and just scrape by. But if there was money to be made on the independents, there'd be way more independents out there and way more wrestlers wrestling full time. So if you unionized even independent wrestling, that would just make it harder for people to run independent shows, because it's look at WWE. They're hardly even running house shows these days because people don't want to go out to events. Wrestling is not at its peak in popularity right now, so that trickles down to the independents. Like, it's hard to get people to come out to events, and you got to rent venues, and some promotions won't even, in Canada, a lot of places require you to have insurance, but I know, as I've learned, even in the US, a lot of companies don't even have insurance. So if a wrestler gets injured, they don't even have insurance to pay for the wrestler's injury if they can't afford to pay for it, because it's too expensive for them to have and still be able to run events. So, Pulsar Lights, what do bouncers make on an hour on average? Well, here in Ontario, since you need a security license, and most bars require you to have a security license, a lot of time they'll just hire security companies to do the bouncing now, which the security companies pay minimum wage here. But when I was doing it, on average, it really depends. Sometimes I remember I was making $60 a night when I first started, when I was 18. And then if you could make $100 a night, as I got into it longer, I mean, that was the big thing as a bouncer, a bill a night. That was a big thing. I work and I got a bill at the end of the night, which it sounded like a lot in those days, but man, that's nothing compared to, you think about some of the situations that you've had. I think the most I ever made, like, as a bouncer guaranteed, was like $125 a night. And I thought I was rich doing that. So there's not a lot of money. Where there can be good money in bouncing is if you're working at a popular club and either they give you a percentage of the tips at the end of the night, which happens, or where there's a lineup, and if you're working the door, you can make money. I remember working at a bar in Calgary during the Stampede one year, and because the line was so big, I was making like a couple $100 at the door from people paying you off to skip the line. But still, that's really nothing. But it does have its benefits. There can be times of high danger, really high danger, and then there can be nights where it's just fun. And then I don't know. I'm going to stay retired, though. As I said, my ex-wife and my parents convinced me that was a bad idea that I had. Jack says, is Kevin Sullivan in my movie? No, he's not. But let's say it gets picked up as a series. I would consider having wrestlers as guest stars on the series. Let's say it gets picked up as a 7-episode series. Daniel, bouncers usually make a set amount. Yeah, exactly. As I said, like, it depends. Like, you usually don't work that long. Usually it's 4 hours and it's like $60, $80, $100, $125. That's usually what it is. And like, if something bad happens and you're stuck there an extra hour because the cops have been called, they'll usually won't even pay you more than that set amount, sadly. Don, Heard Will got banned from WrestleMania for the slap. I don't know about that. I think WWE would still use Will. Cat. Noah did post the Blood Hunter versus Renee Dupree match on their streaming service last year. Renee has a good relationship with Japan. I have no interest in going to Japan. And I didn't report on it, but Noah only had like 300 fans at their show last week. So to fly all the way to Japan to wrestle in front of 300 fans, no, thank you. Arsenal for life. Do I ever think wrestling will be mainstream like in the 90s? Only if like Logan Paul becomes more of a regular character. I don't think that they will. It really depends. Like, as I said, if Logan Paul, he seemed to like wrestling, for instance, and he starts appearing every week and he brings his fans, if they have a star like that, then yeah, it could. But right now, I don't think they're going to build like a new Rock or a new Hulk Hogan from scratch. Nobody seems to even be the next John Cena. Roman Reigns, I think, is their most popular guy they have other than Brock Lesnar, but Brock Lesnar is part-time. So, and Roman Reigns isn't, as I said, he's a good wrestler and stuff, but he's not like bringing it back the way Austin and Rock brought it back in the 90s. But yeah, if Logan Paul, for instance, if he makes some sort of deal and he starts wrestling regularly and brings his fans, maybe I could see something like that happening, but I don't know. Chances are it's all up in the air. I don't know. Will the Blood Hunter movie be based on a wrestling movie? I think I already answered that. Disco says Stephanie McMahon wasn't wearing her wedding ring at WrestleMania. I didn't see it. Did not see it. UFC Nexus says, well, it would work for me, a wrestling union. Well, if you're in the WWE, it would work for you. But if you're not in the WWE, I don't think it would be very beneficial to you. Jason says Tommy Dreamer pays $1,500 a month for health benefits. So I guess that means Impact doesn't cover his health plan or anything. Yeah, Canada's doesn't have health benefits, but our healthcare system is extremely slow. For instance, I tore my pec, and I'm shooting here on the Canadian healthcare system. On October 23rd, I tore my pec. Okay? I didn't get an MRI on it because our healthcare system is so slow until December. I only got the results of the MRI this past Monday, and we're in April, from an injury that occurred in October. And what I was told by my family doctor on Monday when I talked to her about my torn pec, and we are in April and this happened in October, that she now has to forward it off to a surgeon because she's not enough of an expert in pec tears to tell me if it's going to require surgery or not. So now I got to wait even longer to speak to a surgeon. Whereas if this was in the US, my biggest mistake that happened in LA, I did pay for my own health insurance. I should have gone to a doctor in LA. They probably would have had the MRI that night and possibly even the surgery. If I had stayed there another week, I could have just extended my health coverage. But Canada is just so slow. My second hepatitis C treatment was recommended to me through an American doctor because the Canadian healthcare system sucked. But yes, it is free. It is free. So there's an advantage to it, but it's extremely slow. So I'm not going to answer any more questions because the gym closes early today. I got to get to the gym. Have a great weekend.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please help me out and like this video, then click the subscribe and get notifications buttons so you don't miss any of my latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Follow